It's my pleasure to introduce Dana Ballard. So it's great to have Dana here. I never been to the same conference with Dana when I was graduate student back to the day, because he always sent students to different conferences and so on. And one personal experience I have is like this example I gave earlier in your introduction. I think Dana's research really connect behavior, brain at multiple levels, from psychophysics study to computational modeling to robotics to visual attention, reinforcement learning model, and predictive coding in the brain and so on. I think that's really an integrated way to study human behavior and the brain. So please welcome Dana Ballard.
So I'm excited to be here. I've been here before. My first time I came to Indiana, I was very excited, but I had this really, really brilliant student I was working with, and I thought, I'm going to just tell him what he's doing. And so I gave my talk, and I don't think I did a very good job, but I conveyed I was very excited. And so they invited the guy out to explain what I was trying to say, and of course that's Chen. And so once he got here, they thought, yeah, it is exciting. Chen was a little nervous. He wanted to be in computer science. He says, I think I belong in computer science. I told him, look, for the questions you want to ask, the fact that you're going to work with Linda Smith, this is a chance of a lifetime. If you give that up, you're crazy. So anyways, it seems like it's working out. So this is about eye movements. Ultimately, we have to get to eye movements, but to get there, we have to go on a bit of a journey. And this is like going to church. You've seen it before, but it's always good to see it again. And but it's very important lesson. So if I don't give you this header, everything will go west. But it's very, very important that just to remember the fact that phobia is only a degree at arm's length, width of a thumb at arm's length. Very, very tight place where all the resolution is in, and heavily loaded with color sampling. And then this, let's see, these are colleagues at KTH in Zurich, and they have a camera based on retinal principles, and so you basically see temporal differences only, and so they're showing off the fact that it's working. And we won't watch this forever, but what I would like to have you take home from this is that people have tried to reconstruct the image with a model of what's coming down the optic nerve, and nobody's been successful on this. And my take on it comes from deep learning, is there's not enough information coming down the optic nerve to reconstruct the image at all. But you don't need that. You just want a zip code. They're showing off. They're just firing a spike for the middle pixel here as you're driving through this environment. But basically, you don't have to reconstruct the image. You just have enough bits to light up the priors in the visual memory. So basically, when we don't see what's coming in the retina at all. We see what basis functions got turned on in the cortex. And if you got that, that's a really, really, really important, maybe, these lessons. And I don't know if we're going to get to my magician. He's coming up at the end of this, I think. But what happens for the magician, this is a big lesson for us, because he's going to juggle some balls. But when he palms the ball, you see nothing. But the internal model, is running the ball. And so you're quite sure that he's actually throwing up the ball. And here's actually an interesting lesson too, is that everybody knows that the LGN is the I/O port for the cortex. So if you want to send the main way of getting information into the V1 striate cortex is through the LGN. But of course, I think most of the people in the room know that there's 10 times the connections going the other way. So the connections from striate cortex to the LGN are times 10 from the retina coming in, but the thalamus also has lateral connections. So if you add everything up, the amount of axons coming from the retina is 6% of the total. So 6% of the total connections to the thalamus are just coming from the retina. So I mean, you don't have to be much of a deep thinker to believe that the cortex is asking the thalamus for information that's there. So that basically the job of the striate cortex is to quiz the thalamus. And this is a very old but very elegant picture by Roger Dutel, where he used radioactive tracers to light up the retinotopic map in striate cortex. But just again, to sensitize it, every time you make a saccade, the entire visual cortex is changing its representation. And this, saliency. This is a classic paper, but Koch and Ullman, they decided, well, with all these retinotopic maps, where would you look? Well, you have all these little feature maps, and if you see all these features lined up, that would be a good place to look. And they started a fire that has yet to be put out, and but that's saliency. And we can go to John Tsotsos. He's a personal friend. This is 09. Maybe that's a little dated, but the idea is the saliency models are ever more sophisticated, and Jim did a good job of saying that, you know, they're now being superseded by more task-oriented things. But here, this is the information theoretic era, and here you have some pictures, 2 pictures, and then you have the human data is here, and the saliency model here. Isn't that, well, I gotta have my fun. You can see that this is salient in this model. It's not looked at this model because the people know that this is a traffic light facing the other way. The people are also excited about what's going on here because they're sort of drivers, whereas the model thinks, I don't know what's going on here. The people want to see who's driving. This is the saliency map is really excited about the wheels. This is sort of a dog attention model here. So you can see that, well, so you could, I mean, you take any old saliency model and it'll, but if you use this metric, where do people look and what are saliency, you get lots of correlations, but what do they mean? This is Konstantin Rothkopf. I have to apologize for Jen for not remembering my paper. Thank God for Google Scholar goes and finds papers that I know I've completely forgotten that I've written and organizes them for me. Thank you, Google. But as time goes by, the papers kind of fade away, but the really bright students you work with, they're forever. And this is Konstantin Rothkopf. He's another one. And this task you might have seen before. You're going to see a lot of it, a lot more right now. So if you want to take what I call a tenured professor nap, this is a good time. Otherwise, stay alert, because this is testing this idea of saliency. So what you got to do is you got to navigate down this sidewalk, and you want to bump into these purple things and pick them up, but avoid the blue thing. So that's your main task, and the subjects are sitting here in the virtual environment. They got their helmet on, they're ready to go. And Konstantin's made this, put lots of distractors in here, because if you're going to be distracted by saliency, wow, this is a place. If, in case you don't recognize this is an upside down cow. This is not homage to Indiana. It's German performance art where a guy flew a dead cow over Berlin in a helicopter and exploded it over a group of mimes who were doing classical dance. That passes for art in Germany. Anyway, here it is. And so what can you do? You can Okay, Dana, let's just take this out for a test drive. So we're going to count the percent of time you looked at all these things, and our 3 tasks of the litter, the obstacle and the footpath, and then grass and other is all the things, the distractors. So, oh no, Dana, this is such a great hypothesis, and it's wrong. People are looking at the distractors, but wait, this is before they were told to go. So they're just standing on the starting line. Well, let's tell them to go. Okay, so wait a sec. Go. So all of a sudden, once you're done the task, the distractors get nothing. And sometimes I just spend the rest of the afternoon doing this, but there you go. But it's the claim would be, when you're looking at the distractors, you have an agenda, you just don't know what it is. So you always have an agenda. And so what we try to do, and a lot of the work is done with Mary, is to try to construct tasks where we can control the agenda. This is another Constantine genius idea. Let's see where you look. Let's see where the islands look when you're picking up the litter or avoiding the obstacle. Now, the visual image, forget about the fact that they're different colors. The shapes are identical, but now here, when you're going around the object, you're looking at the edge, whereas you're approaching it, you're looking at the middle. So the brain is coupled to the environment in 2 completely different ways for these things. And so, of course, in computer science, what do we do next? We have a little avatar that has these 3 separate tasks. And he's sort of cycling them through here as he goes down here. And in virtual reality, you can pick up things by sucking them into your body. There you go. That's very nice. And avoiding the obstacles. And so when you can see what he's doing in these little panels. He can't do all these things simultaneously, look at these things simultaneously, so he has to. And virtual reality, if you don't have a phobia, the traffic lights have to be really big. But there you go. And here we go. So now we're going to start with the technical material here, and this is a shout out to Rod Brooks. So he changed really the world. Before Rod Brooks, it was the world of Mar. So where you had the vision happened, and then cognition happened, and then action happened. And the front end of the vision was the principle of least commitment. But now Rod changed it all, and he said, look, you should be quantize things in terms of entire throughput task with vision hardwired right onto action. And this is very important for us because we have this idea of somehow we're going to encapsulate mental function into these modules. And these modules are reinforcement modules, and they know what the state should be, and they know what the input should be, and they learn what the output should be. And the idea, of course, is the vast cortical memory. We have no idea how many of these are in there, but what we do know is that we can't do lots of things at a time. And everybody in the room can form their own hypothesis. How many things can you do at a time? 12, 4? So the idea is for tasks that you have to monitor, you have to bite into a working memory. Working memory is used to keep those alive, and so that's a small number. And maybe if you're overlearned tasks, it could be a higher number. Plus, when you have these tasks, you have a lot of them. So if you get into trouble and you want to swap them out, you can do it. And in this model way we think about it, they're swapped out at kind of that magic 300 millisecond number. So the trip through the cortex basal ganglia, somewhere around 300 milliseconds. And so if you want to swap it out, that's the time scale. So this picture, even though it's very symbolic, is going to be helpful. It's going to be the underpinning. So basically what we can do is we can go inside one of these boxes. So the next panel, let's take the top off this box and see what's inside. And so, of course, what we have to do is we have to have vision coming in and actions going out. And this is reinforcement learning. So in this image, basically, we know what's important. What's important in a world of cans is the heading to the closest can. And so in state space, here's distance and angle. Here's the little guy in the state space. It's basically you have an angle in the distance, and that's the heading to the nearest can. And here it is right here. And what you have to do is you have to have your action. And technically, this is your policy. So this is your policy, and I apologize how boring this is. It's head towards the can. Okay, and so if it's on this side, head towards it. But here's where the enormous payoff, and this is reinforcement learning lives on this, is that the value of doing so. And so you can see the cans are this is a log scale. The cans are very valuable if they're close by, but in the distance, you might get distracted. You might get, for various reasons, you might not get your can, and so you have to discount the value when something's far off. And so for our particular can that we picked, here it's its value. So these two things are very important. So the value of being in the state and your policy for being in the state. But now, there are two additional things that you have to take away from this diagram. One is that you can have a nice notation of a Q value. And what is that? A Q value says, well, when you see this policy, these are the ones this is your choice, but from this state, you could go in other directions too. And so for every action you can take from every state, that the expected discount or reward for taking that is the Q value of that state action pair. And so that you could store your data as a Q table. And the Q table is all the cross product of the states and their actions from that state. And so we'll be talking about these Q values a lot. So you really have to put that in your short-term memory. And the other thing is important, it's going to be important, is the discount factor. So the fact that future rewards are going to be discounted. If there's questions, now's the time to ask them because you need this to go forward, Rich.
About this. But I do have a bit of disagreement about your previous statement about the number of modules that exist in our short-term memory. Yes, that's true. I spent a good deal of my professional career talking about automatic processing behavior. Where you get parallel access to all of those modules in memory for various purposes due to learning memory. So the short-term active attentive memory, that's
I'm totally on. Okay, I'm totally on board with that. But just to shoot myself in the foot, I would say that there's another limit you run into is that you run into a neural crosstalk at some level before you get to infinity. But that's over beer. Okay, here we go. So once you got we took the can off of this one, but here's the other modules. There's the sidewalk. You want to be in the middle of the sidewalk, and obstacles. It's not good to be walking fast when the obstacle's right in front of you. If you've ever run around your bedroom at night with the lights off, you know what I mean. Okay, and so here what we have is here's every little module has a policy. So I guess this is reflecting my policy. Go left, one going right. But you know it in the gerrymandered government, it goes the other way. But so what are we going to do? Two lefts, one right. Again, we appeal to American politics. You get more votes from your reward function. So if you have the reward, you have the value of these policies, and so you can basically add them up and go to the one that's the most valuable. Really, that gets a chuckle, not in the end, I guess. Another red state. Stop it, Dana. Okay, good. Okay, we had that hiatus there, because now comes the technical material. So this is actually the main point of the talk. Is I'm hoping you kind of buying into that formalism. And I should say that reinforcement learning is coming along at great speed. And there are some much more sophisticated versions of the explanation I offered so far, but they take a little time to develop. So we're going to stick with the easy ones because they allow me to make these other points. And the whole purpose of the other points is that, maybe I should sketch the picture in a larger venue here, is that reinforcement learning needs the state space, the S. But the state space suffers from the curse of dimensionality. So if the state space has a high dimension, it's going to cost you to search it. And most of the new developments have tried to come up with clever ways to address that cost and bring it down. But one way to bring it down is just to modularize things. Now, unfortunately, when we engineer them, we could get into trouble. And so another brilliant student, and he's putting in a front-end interface that use deep learning to suck out just the piece of state space you need for a module, but we won't do that here either. But here, even if you engineer the state space, you get incredible bonuses for going down this route. And that's what I want to do for the rest of the time, is just to give you a sense of what a good thing this kind of decision is to factor the bigger state space into smaller state spaces. And one is that supposing you have these modules that have these policies, and supposing you have some that are trained up, and of course, also I should say, is what you're supposed to do is use these modules in any combination. So you're not handcuffed to use only 3, 4, and 15. You can use them in any combination, and they compose. And if the brain doesn't have a composable structure, I don't know what to do. But here, so let's see. In this setting, let's suppose that these modules are learning up, and under this assumption, what we're going to do is we're going to say that, well, when we pick a set of modules and they're running, they know what the total reward is. Since they're running, the brain is getting rewards. They know what the total is, but can they figure out what's called the credit assignment problem? How to divide the reward amongst the modules. It's a really clever thing you could do. It's a bunch of linear equations. You could say, when I want to adjust the reward, what should I do? I can take a weighted value of what I think my estimate is, but then I have another source. I have what the reward was minus what the other guys think that the reward is. So there's what I think it is and what the other ones think it is. And so if I have a weighted combination of those two and I just iterate, it's beautiful. So it's just the relaxation way of solving linear equations. And not only that, you might be wondering what this beta should be. And to get your head wrapped around that, you would say, oh, well, if this new guy's starting out, his estimate's going to be, or her estimate, I give the modules could be any size. But when they are starting out, the noise estimate is going to be high. So what we're going to do is pick beta so that it weights it's weighted by the various variances. And this is the standard formula for a Q combination. Yeah.
The variance
of my reward, my estimate. So I'm updating this. I'm just updating this, and so basically I can just take a running average of the variance of this estimate as it's running with different colleagues here. Okay, and thanks for that question. Okay, and this just shows that for our particular problem, if we take different combinations of that we can start out with random values, and then we can recover the value of the states, and then we can recover the policy. So in our walking down the walkway with litter and obstacles, we can, that's only 3 modules. We can recover everything from a random start, but we've also run this up to 20 modules, and it works just fine. Wow, so that's one really nice thing. This is the bigger graph. Will you trust me? This is 20 modules working just fine. So now we move on to another thing that's really, really, really important, particularly for the people studying autism, because yeah.
Those variances related by something about the importance of the different modules, because otherwise keep adding modules, the weighting goes to 0. I mean, it's if you want to take into account more and more and more modules, then don't you have to weight the variances by?
Oh, okay. Well, first, Rich, let me be clear that you have a lot of modules, but you run them in small combinations. Okay, so you're only having say 3 or 4 or 5 are live at a time for these running estimates. Okay. But the fact that you want to put reward, we have to think about the other thing you said. It sounds really good, so we have to think about that offline. Okay, but here now we have to do something incredibly cool. So what does reinforcement learning do? Is you have the rewards, and then you program after it learns and learns and learns and learns. It has a policy. It knows how to do state. If you're in this state, you know what your policy is. You know what your action should be. But can we go the other way? What if I give you just some observations of state action sequences? What about that? What can we recover the rewards that generated that sequence? And this is Konstantin Rostov's algorithm. It's incredibly cool. You can't even talk about it without getting goosebumps. And why? Because before he came along, the prevailing algorithms, what they did is they guessed the reward, ran reinforcement learning, made up perturbations and rewards, and kept it if it was good, and ran reinforcement learning all over again. My God, I mean, your children would be still watching that computer terminal waiting for them to converge. So here we're going to have a very fast algorithm. And why? It's because you know what's coming, modules. So here's the problem. We have the observations and reward, but we actually want the other way around. So what we'd like to do is use Bayes' rule, and so now we want the probability of the observations given reward times reward and a normalization factor. Okay. So let's push this further. What are we going to do? Let's make a probability distribution. And what do we want it to do? This probability distribution has a parameter alpha, and then it's just the expected value of the joint expected value of the observation and reward together. And so we want to maximize this. And so, but wait, this is actually what we meant by the Q value. And not only that, but the Q values are modularized. So let's write, that lets us, for a particular state an action observation, we can say that it's this particular observation here. So now we're maximizing, now we're maximizing this, but the only free parameter here, since we have these tables, the only free parameter is these little alphas. So this complicated formula has just one scalar parameter per module. Yeah.
States are linked observations using a measure model. Is that the relationship.
Yeah, so you have to have a prior for your reward, like when you expand the formula, and I put that slide at the end, but so of course Jim needs it, and he should need it. Anyway, so here we go. So basically, if we want to maximize this probability, that's our formula, and this formula just has a little parameter, and you can do that on a handheld calculator. So and it works. So here's in this orange is the agent is given a reward, and that's the trajectory that it picked. So if you give the data to the inverse algorithm, it'll tell you how to weight the modules. And then if you run those modules, you'll get a slightly different trajectory every time. But these trajectories are, we call this close enough for government work. Yeah.
When you run inverse reinforcement learning, you also need to find the cues, right? But you are assuming that the cue already...
You know those. Okay, thank you for that. Right, so the idea is that this is a very, very, very important point, is that when you have a module, is that when you've learned up your module and you've decided on the reward value for that module, then when you use them in combination, the only thing that's up for grabs is the relative weighting for them.
Okay, so you assume that the Q, we know the Q values, in which case you just have to do the relative.
Right. Right. Thank you. Thank you. That's essential. Okay. And of course, this is showing you. Here's your point. So here's the individual value tables for the modules, and then here's this, and here's for those module weights that you pick for this demonstration. This shows the scaled values that you've learned from the data. So once more we're feeling these, you know, and with those weights, you can generate some trajectories. Those trajectories are fed back into the inverse reinforcement learning algorithm, and here's the scaled results that you get. Okay? Thank you. And I don't know, this Rohan, and so he's brilliant. I think the luckiest thing for me is I've worked with some really smart guys, and Rohan Zhang is another one. And Mary, Mary showed you. I'm helped by Mary in so many ways in research, and this is another one. Is her lab put together a version of this problem of reward and obstacles, and Rohan has been working on transporting his model into that space, and here's his result that shows the trajectory that the human took over this path, and you can see it's picking up these targets and avoiding these obstacles, and it's staying near the dots on the path here. And what this green is showing is that basically, since it's a Bayes world, that you can show the probability distribution of the policy along this path. And I don't know, it's just a very pretty to look at. We could just sit here and look at this for a long time, but we're not going to. But this is just to advertise Roland Zhang's unpublished results, as he noticed that in the formula for reinforcement learning, the discount factor appeared in the same places where the weight was. So basically, since it's a parameter and you have one discount factor per module, that you can recover it. So he went through the algebra and developed an optimization algorithm to suck it out. It was really easy, but once you got the idea, and this is showing that for these, this is stay on the path only, path plus obstacle, and path plus target, and all. And this should show the discount factor that you're calculating between 0 and 1. They're slightly different. And this is really, I don't know, it's something to be excited about because like people like Benji Doyer showed with fMRI that supposedly the brain has a place where it keeps track of discount factors. And so some jobs are not very important. They have a low discount factor and some are a high discount factor. And this shows that a lot has to work to verify the meaning of these, but it does show that if you take these different task combinations, the little modules have separate discount factors that are different. Meaning that sometimes if an obstacle is far away, you don't care about it so much. So I know it's very clever, and it's not published, but it will be. Ron keeps promising Mary that it's going to be published, but he's going to come through. So this is the last thing, because so after all, it's about personal vision here. What about vision, and what about eye movements? And where should we look with gaze? And I'm looking at this terminal to see how much time I have.
5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay, so I'll have to talk really fast. Okay, so this is Nathan Sprague. He's another prof in Virginia. And so here, the idea is where should you look? I told Nathan several years ago, I told him the wrong thing. I said, it's just reinforcement learning. You just should be rewarded for looking at the right place. That doesn't work because the difference between looking at the right place and the wrong place is so tiny that you can get all these martingales and policy martingales and nothing goes right. But Nathan I was taking the tenured professor now, and he came in my office and he says, I got it. And what did he have? He said, okay, if you're here, if you know where you are in your state space, that's your policy, but if you don't know, you drift. If you're not looking, it just drifts, so that your knowledge of where you think you are in the state space, it becomes uncertainty. And that's going to cost you. And so it's, again, one of these. And then when you look, you know, but when you don't look, you drift. You looked, you drift. You look, you drift. And now, so what we're going to do now is that we're going to let these modules fight it out. And we'll choose 30 milliseconds, the magic number. So every 30 milliseconds, they have to look somewhere. And who should get the look? It's the one who gets the most gain in reducing its uncertainty in its state space. So here, and I've erased all the little arrows, but you can see the beige is the a priori uncertainty, and the color is the a posterior uncertainty. And here is Walter doing his little simulation, and here obstacle is close enough, and it's very important. So it gets a look, but on the next one, it's even closer, so it's uncertainty getting another look, and then another one. But here, in 1200 milliseconds later, we're free of this, and now we look at the sidewalk, and then after that 3 can looks, it gets, because the computation happens again. And so, Nathan showed that it's a win against the picking a random one to look at and updating them in cyclic order. Now back to Mary. Mary had a nice student, Brian Sullivan, and he had people drive this car. This is the iTrack, and they're told they keep the speed at 30 and follow the red car. and it's the car is going a little faster, so they have to make decisions of which one to do. And is this good? Is this Q2? This is a very good track. And so your car, speedometer, car, speedometer. Car, speedometer. Looked at that other car there. My moment is coming up in this tape that I really like. It's coming up now. Yes! There's nothing in the mirror, right? But you're, as a driver with 150,000 miles under your belt, you don't change lanes without looking at the rear mirror. So, okay. So here's your visual system. You don't look at anything else. You look at the car, the mirror, and the speedometer. Hey, by the way, you sail and sea guys, Can I force myself to do this? Just defines the algorithm that makes this tiny little red point the most salient thing in the image. Ha, ha, ha. Okay, here we go. Move on. Okay, so what we know, as Rich agree with me with, is that it's all in your head. So if you don't look, your uncertainty is in your head that you're using to drive, it degenerates a little bit. Then you can look and update that, but now speedometer error is growing. So what you have to do is use Leif Johnson's algorithm. I don't know. I'm surrounded by clever people. So people in this room, I bet you this is almost the home team for this, is barrier models. So if you want to make a decision, you have a particle drift towards a yes or no. But if you have that single part model here, it's very, very hard to tune. And Leif Johnson, he couldn't do it, but then he thought of, wait a second, what about if I use lots of particles? And what if they drift? And what if I make my decision probabilistically? And so basically there's 3 distributions of particles, the ones for the speedometer, the ones for following the car, and the ones for staying in the lane. And every 300 milliseconds there's a combination, but it's a probabilistic combination. So basically you take those distributions and there's a formula that you're not going to get to see. You have to read the paper, but the formula is based on the importance. So the more important something is that this here is going to be the width. This is inverse. Sorry, inverse width is important. And so wide things are very important. Narrow things are not important. And then when you see this sort of palette thing here, it means that you're fixating on, in this case, the car. And so you can see that when you're fixating the car, you know where the state pace is. But the moment you look away to the speedometer, those particles start drifting. And then but when you're looking at the speedometer, you know where that is. But the moment where you look back here, those particles start drifting again. And you can win multiple times in a row. That's why you get these long patches. How are we doing? This is the last hard thing. Is it okay? All right. So very proud of this. So this is Brian's data, Brian Mary's student, and this is a human, and you can take the fixation interval. So you can see that reading the speedometer is very quick, so you get these very tight green things. But a lot of times you stay locked onto the car, so you get these very long-tailed intervals of looking. But look at this. Leif tuned up, of course he did pick the parameters to get the best possible fit. Of course he did that. But wow, what a fit he got. This is the Kublik-Leibler divergence. Wow, look at these numbers, 0.05. That basically means that these are the same. So we're very excited about this. Okay, and you're also very excited because, well, we're almost done. It's in computer science, you can let the computer drive the car. So we did that here. The computer is driving the car, and the tuning is a little different. Okay, but now, the other thing to do this, so you met these guys intellectually. This is Nathan. He came with the original idea of the fact that if you weren't looking, your measurements were getting fuzzy. And then this is Mr. Inverse Reinforcement Learning, the sharp guy. And this is Leif, who came up with the particles. And then this is the up-and-coming superstar, Rohan, John. And they did all the work, and they're great. And so thank you. Maybe in Mary.
But their work isn't all desk work, as shown by this experiment on the attention span needed for safe driving. The experimenter is Bench Director, psychologist John Sanders.
Driving along a section of Route 128, and I'm trying to get an estimate of the demand by this particular section of road. The speed of the car is constant, and as the road varies from moment to moment, in the demand that it makes upon me, I must look more often.
So
The IRB would love that.
I've given this talk before, and one time I said I was bragging that I actually have done this to my embarrassment. Is on the freeway, I've closed my eyes, and I can tell you 1 to 3 seconds, it doesn't matter. But 4 seconds, 5 seconds, you start to feel those adrenaline shocks. And so Wayne Gray, you probably know him. He when I said that, he sent me this movie. But here's something you know, and this is very important, is that what senders didn't know, according to our model, is you don't need the helmet, because basically the eyes are being polling to update the measurement, so that when they're this is a fight we could have, when they're updating measurement module A, module B is drifting. And so you actually don't need that thing. That's a natural ecological consequence of your visual architecture.
Nonetheless, can you tell me when you're about to go in the highlights so I won't?
It's a dangerous place. Mary was taking me back 2 days at a week ago. Mary's driving me back for the 2 a.m. and we're driving in the car at night, and this car in passing us just slammed into the side of the car and drove off. I thought, my gosh, how many times has that happened?
Maybe he was closing his eyes.
No, I was closing my eyes, but Mary was driving. Anyway, so sorry, we should have some time for questions. Okay, yeah.
Just echoing from earlier this morning with the drifting, with the peripheral vision help out a lot.
Yes, I mean that's a huge. I do think that you're capable for using peripheral vision, and Mary's talking this morning. You saw the block copying. Jeff House, her former student, put all the blocks in this.
No, I didn't.
You didn't talk. You showed the block copying.
Yeah.
You did, Mary. You had blocks.
Oh, the original block. I thought you were going to talk about this.
Oh, sorry. But what Jeff did is he put all the blocks very close together, and under that thing, they were close enough to sneak into parafoveal areas, and you didn't make as many eye movements. And so I actually do. There's such a premium in fovea, and so if you could do things in the peripheries, there's such a reward for doing that. But I think you probably can. But this Heinlein Deubel has shown that it's very hard. A lot of people have shown it's very, very, very hard to do the right experiment to show that that's happened. What you have to be a cautionary note. It's not like you're using it for radio flow. Like again, Mary showed some complicated flows here. If you want to use the flow pattern, of course. But can you read cat in your periphery? That's the tricky one, and I don't know what probably people in this room know the status of that better than me.
And I did bimanual reaching, and if you have the targets are close to one another, then boom, you do this. But if you separate them a little bit, then you have a hovering hand. Well, right?
Okay, that's it. We're exactly on the same page.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I can understand why your program didn't look at the other cars and trucks. But I wonder why your people didn't.
I think one thing is, okay, people are really smart, so they know that they're all these students that got into college, and so they I think my answer to that, Mary will back me up on this, is they kind of know that those evil professors are not going to hit them head on, and so they kind of suspect that it's going to be safe. You did know on one of these, though, on the clip I showed you, the person did look at an oncoming car.
I think actually following the car is a very demanding thing, and which is why it's dangerous.
Yeah.
So you really want to monitor that distance, and so other tops have to be allowed to.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dana. 15-minute break.